Okay, so I'm glad that I waited until today to do my final reflection because I actually got to observe an adaptive challenge that the class faced in the 1000 level class and um, how they overcame it as well from start to finish. So, a few observations at the beginning of the semester, the class had adopted an attendance policy, basically saying for every member in the community who misses a class or is more than 15 minutes late to class, they count as one tally unless they have a doctor's note. So, for example, if two people miss class, then the number goes up by 2. And if the number was arbitrarily 1 to start off with, after those two people missed, the tally would go to 3. If one person had a doctor's note, though, the number would be at 2. And if the total tally is less than 7, by the end of the semester, they don't have to take a final. Now, a few observations of what I heard at the beginning when they were doing journey presentations is I heard the class ask David to do a journey presentation, at which point I noticed that he asked the class, well, then you have a decision to make. Am I in the community or out of the community? If I'm in, I'll do a presentation. If I'm out, then I won't do a presentation. So they wanted him in the community, and he did his presentation. And then I noticed that David had planned to not show up for one class period to see if the community would leave class or lead class. Really enabling others to act is one of the concepts that we talk about. And I heard the class, upon David not showing up, I heard them discussing what type of reward they would get for David missing. And I noticed that they wanted to lower the number, the attendance number. And I observed that when David had gotten back, he didn't go for lowering the number. He actually put it higher. And the class, I noticed, got angry because they were saying things like, that's not fair to David. And also, you're supposed to be in the community to help us, not to hurt us, by adding another number to the tally. And I then heard David ask the class, well, am I in the community or not? If I'm in the community, the number goes up. If I'm not in the community, the number stays the same. And then the class, I noticed, proceeded to kick David out of the community. So my question is, why does the class want David in the community only when it's good for them and then throw him out when it hurts their attendance number? I'll get to answering that in a second and some interpretations in a second, but I also want to share some observations from yesterday and today. I saw one girl, Hannah, wrote on Facebook, I really think we should go with Najia's idea and invite David back into the community and put one more tally on our attendance thing. And another person, June, responded on their Facebook page by saying, I will write a short letter about this and read it to David tomorrow if we agree that that's the right thing to do. Then today I heard June read the letter in the form of a card to David and invite him back into the community. And I also heard David accept it. He also talked a little bit about why he was not going to change the tally as well. So some interpretations as to why David would initially be thrown out. First of all, forming a community is a process, and they hadn't fully grasped the concept of a community as Peter Block defines it in his book, Community. He says, community is about the experience of belonging. The word belonging has two meanings. One, to belong is to be related to and be a part of something. It is membership. And the second meaning is has to do with being an owner and taking responsibility for what is owned, taking ownership. The class, at that point, I feel had formed a community of membership up until the point of their journey presentations, and they wanted David to be a part of that membership community. However, they weren't ready to take on the responsibility for David's actions, for a member of the community whose actions would hurt them. Another interpretation would be that the class didn't know how to respond to David's ultimatum and was a little bit blindsided. His ultimatum was add a tally because he was in the community, or kick him out and the number stays the same. He was essentially turning up the heat, in Heifetz's words, and just to get them out of their comfort zone and into the growth zone. And they flat out rejected it. An interpretation of this would be that they didn't make the connection between what they call concept number 2, relationships are the currency of power. Maybe they just didn't weigh the gains and the losses of David being in and out of the community. Maybe they just didn't think about, from a strategy standpoint, about, how losing David's relationship power would affect them in the short term and the long term. And, just to keep the tally the same, I think that gain, keeping the number the same so that they would be less likely to take a final, was definitely more important to them. Again, that's just one interpretation. Another one would be that they only care about their grade and not having to take a final. To be honest, some students are just in that class to fulfill an elective, or to get a few extra credits in, or to get an easy A. And not everyone is as invested in the process of forming a community for whatever reason, and those people do have power and they have a voice in the classroom. So if they voice their opinions and want to kick somebody out of the community when it hurts them because they care more about not having to take a final, then that definitely affects the community. So my question is, what changed? Heifetz says in Adaptive Leadership that adaptive leadership is specifically about change that enables the capacity to thrive. I think that's exactly what happened. We definitely saw adaptive leadership there for a community to go from kicking their leader out of the community to accepting him back, with the consequence of possibly having to add a tally. Now, David didn't agree to adding a tally, but they were willing to take responsibility for that and taking ownership of David as part of their community and the consequences too. Peter Block says in his book, "What makes community building so complex is that it occurs in an infinite number of small steps, sometimes in quiet moments that we notice out of the corner of our eye. It calls for us to treat as important many things that we thought were incidental." Block says it's an infinite amount of tiny steps. Somewhere along the lines in the semester, those steps have added up, and the community has grown to accept responsibility for David being a part of the community. And this is evident by Hannah's comment on Facebook, on their Facebook page, that said we should invite him back into the community, and we can and put the tally number back up. This shows ownership of their community and their space, and their informal authority outweighs David's positional power, yet they chose to potentially add that tally if that's what David had wanted. So what things did they have to overcome in order for this to happen? And what things did they do to overcome their lack of responsibility and accountability for their community. First of all, I feel like mirror neurons act before the brain makes connections. There's an article by the Harvard Business Review that it's called Social Intelligence and the Biology of Leadership. It talks about how we have neurons that are programmed to mirror our external environment. And so things like ritual, coming in, having a welcome by David, going through the business and having 5 minutes of inspiration, that just comes naturally. When David had missed class, the community had gone through those steps because of the importance of ritual and those mirror neurons taking over to replicate that. Once this started happening subconsciously, I feel that more connections were made from their 3 concepts that they've learned this semester. Leaders seek to understand, relationships are the currency of power, and there's no growth in the comfort zone and no comfort in the growth zone. I know that they've done this because they quoted these 3 concepts in their letter to David earlier today, inviting him back into the community. Therefore, I know that they have connected their concepts to what goes on in their class. Also, the small group projects, they have been done now, and after going through those, the class has undergone a transformation. Peter Block says that small groups are the unit of transformation, and I feel like everybody has had a voice in the community since their small groups, and I think that has opened more people's eyes to more perspectives and really played a part in them taking ownership of David as part of their community. And I think it would probably be different for each person, but something triggered a change in the values and the attitudes about the community, their role in the community, and they, whether consciously or subconsciously, they developed some responsibility and accountability for that community. And they've now developed a team mentality. Just earlier today, I heard them say things like, let's go for the attendance record, and because they're on pace to do that, and now it's not about not taking a final, it's about breaking a record and doing it together because of everyone's commitment to that policy and the community. So overall, I mean, David, I think, summed it up today well when he said, I think some of them get it. They're starting to get it. This is not just a class. And I'm open to interpretations, but I think this means that we've done our job and that we've seen adaptive leadership happen in our class. So yeah, my sources were the Social Intelligence and Biology of Leadership, the Practice of Adaptive Leadership, and community as well. Thanks. Bye.